الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. So inshallah we'll continue. I don't know if we're continuing or this was previous surahs also?
Yeah,
or,
we
okay.
did last 20 and 20, so yeah, we're sort of going down.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll discuss inshallah amongst ourselves some of the meanings of Surah Al-Asr. Surah Al-Asr is a Meccan surah, meaning it was revealed in Mecca, and we know that some surahs were revealed in Mecca, some surahs were revealed in Al-Madinah, and you will find that in the beginning a lot of times of the surah in the Quran it'll say whether it's revealed in Mecca or Al-Madinah, and that's for the most part. Sometimes the surah is mostly revealed in one place except for a few ayat, a few verses, they could be revealed in another place. So Surah Al-Asr is revealed in Mecca. And there's some signs, meaning some kind of topics, that from those topics you can take that this surah was revealed in Mecca or Medina. Meaning you can kind of understand that just from the topic of the surah, even if you don't read exactly where it was revealed. So one of those ways to know where a surah was revealed in Mecca or Medina is if a surah is talking about the very basics of Islam, like just believing in Allah and believing in the Day of Judgment, if that's the main topic of the surah and it doesn't really mention much else in terms of rules or regulations, then you would find that most of the time it's a Meccan surah. Because who are the people who are addressed in Mecca? Are they mostly Muslims or are they mostly non-Muslims? Mostly non-Muslims, yeah. So in the early days of Islam, most of the people in Mecca were non-Muslims, and the Muslims were very few. They were the followers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were only a few in number. So most of the people that Allah was speaking to in the Quran, they are non-Muslims. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving them the very basics, such as belief in Allah, belief in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If a surah has rules and regulations, how to do this, how to do that, how to deal with society, some ills that might arise in society, some etiquettes that the Muslims need to know, most of the time that surah, you would find that it's revealed in Al-Madinah. In Al-Madinah, the Muslim population is much greater in number. And now you have a Muslim society. And this Muslim society is in need of rules and regulations to regulate that society. And it's not just calling them only to believe in Allah and to believe in the last day, because most of them already believe in it now. So you would find that the topic now might be a lot more in how people should behave, what they should do. And that doesn't mean, of course, it's not talking about believing in Allah. Still you'll find a lot of talk about belief in Allah, belief in the Day of Judgment, belief in the Prophets. But these are kind of general rules that you can understand where a surah was revealed, just kind of from the topic. So Surah Al-Asr, if we just look at it very quickly, what's the translation? First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wal-Asr, inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu s-salihat, wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bil-sabr. Just a quick translation so we understand what we're talking about here. Or would you like to read it? Maybe that would be more accurate.
Which?
The translation?
I agree, the English.
Yeah, the English.
By the promise of time infinite, surely man is in loss, except such as those who have faith and do righteous deeds and join together in the mutual teaching of truth and of patience and perseverance. Jazakallah khair.
So, do we see anything beyond just really basic belief? Do we see any rules here, regulations, anything like that? Or just really just believe in Allah and order others to believe? So, very simple topic, believe in Allah. So that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. So we see that this surah was revealed very early on in Mecca. This surah has a lot of deep meanings. It might seem like it's only a few lines. You know, how deep could we go just in a few lines? But in reality, it has a lot of deep meanings, to the point that Imam al-Shafi'i, one of the greatest of Muslim scholars, he said if Allah didn't reveal any surah and any proof against His creation other than this one surah, this one chapter, it would have been enough. You know, Allah from His mercy, He gave us a very long Quran. that has everything we need to know. So we're not left in any confusion. It's very clear. Believe in this, believe in this, believe in this. So we have no doubt about things. But Imam Shafi'i, he said this surah, with its short lines, it has enough that if Allah was to only reveal this one chapter, it would have been enough for us. It tells us to believe, it tells us to do good deeds, and to order other people with the same. It tells us to order other people with the same also. So this surah, although it's very short, it has very, very deep meanings. وَالْعَصْرِ وَالْعَصْرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by swearing by al-asr. Now we heard the translation, he said by the infinite time. What else might asr mean? What else might al-asr mean? Salat al-asr, right? What else might al-asr mean? The time. Why is the prayer time called al-asr? Because the prayer, that time of day in the Arabic language is called al-asr. That time of day, which is the later part of the day before the sunset. The later part of the day before the sunset is called al-asr. So that's why the scholars of tafsir, they differed. They said, what's the meaning of this oath in the Quran when Allah swears by a time? Is it all of time? Al-asr could mean like time in general. It could mean the actual asr prayer. It could mean the time of asr. The time of asr, which is the latest part of the day. And, one of the rules in tafsir, one of the rules in understanding the Quran, is that sometimes if there's no contradiction between different opinions, they could all be correct. And that would be from the eloquence of the Quran. That the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might say one word or one sentence in a way that could be understood in 2 or 3 different ways. And there might not be any contradiction between those views. Rather, it's all more beautiful ways of understanding that verse. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by al-asr. What does it mean when we say Allah swears by something? What does that mean? It's very important. Okay, but first of all, yes, it's very important. Like, why do we swear? I mean swear like take an oath, not like swear like use swear words. Why do
promise that this is going to happen?
Right. So we swear, and we swear when it's a promise that something is going to happen. If you're absolutely sure of something, you would say, Wallahi, or by Allah, or by God, I'm going to do this thing. We swear when something is very important, or when something's going to happen, or for any other reason. But we swear, and then there's something that comes after that swear, which is called the answer to it. The answer. So everything in the Quran, you will find that Allah swears by things, and then there's the answer, which is what He's swearing upon, or what's the reason why Allah is swearing upon these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like you mentioned, He swears upon something because it's important, to show the importance of the thing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by very important things in the Quran. Every time you find that Allah swears or takes an oath by something, it's something very important. What are some of those oaths in the Quran that Allah swears by? A lot of short surahs you'll notice. Yes, that's very good. Yeah, Wat-tini wa zaytun, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by at-tin, which is the olive, with zaytun, which is the fig. And some scholars say that's a metaphor. The olive and the fig is a metaphor for the lands that those fruits represent, which is Palestine, where some of the prophets came from, and it also represents after it says وَطُورِ سِينِينَ, the mountain of Sinai, it represents the lands of the Prophet Musa. And then وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ, this safe and secure land, that is Mecca. So we see that all of the prophets are represented here. The prophets of, for example, Jesus and those prophets who came from Palestine, Prophet Moses and the prophets of Bani Israel who came from Sinai and Egypt and surrounding areas, and then Prophet Muhammad in Mecca. So, any other examples of something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by in the Quran? Yes. Stars. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم. Allah swears by the sky in different attributes of the sky. والسماء ذات البروج, by the sky filled with stars. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the moon and the sun, to show the importance of those things. And when we think about those things, we think about how great the Creator is. You know, if you think about the creation, it makes you think about how great the Creator is. Is it allowed for us to do the same? Can we say, I swear by the moon that I'm going to do something? Can I say, I swear by the sun, I swear by the moon? No?
I wouldn't do that.
We didn't create it.
Yeah, so we wouldn't, it just sounds wrong. Maybe you're not sure why, but you're like, no, we don't. As Muslims, we don't do that. So Allah can swear by whatever He wants. For us, as the creation of Allah, we can only swear by Allah. We can only swear by Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ actually said that swearing by other than Allah is shirk. Means it's a minor shirk. It's not the kind of shirk that would take you out of Islam, but it's the minor shirk. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever swears by other than Allah has committed shirk. Because for us, what we show importance of is Allah. We swear by Allah to show the importance of Allah, and that we take our oath very seriously. And you have to be careful. If you ever say by Allah or Wallahi that you're going to do something, at this point you're obligated to do it. You have to do it. Except for, there might be some exceptions. For example, if that thing is not permissible, then you have to break that oath. Because it's not permissible to, just because you swore doesn't mean you have to do something which is a sin. But otherwise, if it's something permissible or if it's something which you have to do, then you have to fulfill that oath now. Wal asr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us the importance of time. So we could say, very quickly, the popular opinion is that this verse means by time. Allah is swearing by time. It could also mean Allah is swearing by asr, the prayer. And to show the importance of the asr prayer. Because people are often busy during the asr prayer more than any other time of day. People, you know, for Fajr, usually people are not busy except for just waking up from sleep. But otherwise, they don't really have work at Fajr time. They go to work after Fajr. When it comes to Maghrib and Isha, same thing. Most people are done work at that time. So, Asr time, and also Dhuhr, classically that was a time where people would rest in the middle of the day. They would be working all day, but they take a little rest in the Dhuhr time. They would, it's like the siesta, they call it siesta. In Arabic they call it qaylula. They would go and take a nap at that time or rest. So Asr is the time when people are in the marketplace and people are really busy. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to teach us that this is a very important prayer. Don't miss it and don't be busied from performing this prayer. The Prophet ﷺ, he says about Asr prayer, that whoever misses Asr prayer, it's as if he lost his family and his wealth. As if he lost his family and his wealth. And that hadith was interpreted a couple different ways. It means that the way that that person would receive that calamity on the Day of Judgment is just like the same that you would receive the news of that calamity in this life. So just like imagine in this life, may Allah protect us all and our families and our wealth. Imagine if a person got news in this life, all your, I hate to say it like this, but all your family just died. And all your money is destroyed too, your house burned down, for example, at the same time. Imagine how you would feel at receiving that news. That would be the end of the world for you. Your family, and not only your family, even the money on top of it. Everything that you ever owned, everything you worked for is destroyed. So they said that's the interpretation of the hadith. That on the Day of Judgment, that's the calamity and that's the bad news you would feel like you received on the Day of Judgment for missing Asr prayer. So it's a very important prayer, and that's how a person would feel on the Day of Judgment, having missed this prayer. فَكَأَنَّمَا وُتِرَ أَهْلُهُ مَالُهُ. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever misses the Asr prayer, it's as if he lost his family and his wealth. If we go by the other opinion, the famous opinion, that it means time. Why is Allah swearing by time? What's the importance of time? We know it's important, but let's talk about maybe some examples. How is time important?
To me, it's something that Allah controls and we can never stop. It's always moving.
Right. Time is like a train. It's just always going. A normal human being can't put his hand out to stop a train, right? It's just going to keep coming. So when it comes to time, it's a very scary thing when you think about it. It's something which is rushing. And we are always rushing towards the Day of Judgment. We're always rushing towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Time is pushing us. You know, this second that just passed, it will never come back. A day that just passed, a month that just passed, a year that just passed, it will never come back. We will never get it again. So time is something which is very valuable, to the point that some of the scholars, they said we are made up of time. When time goes by, it's like a piece of us is gone. A piece of us has just died. A piece of us has left. Al-Hasan al-Basri, he has that statement that يَا ابْنَ آدَمْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ أَيَّامٌ إِذَا ذَهَبَ يَوْمٌ ذَهَبَ بَعْضُ. He said very eloquent words. He said, O son of Adam, you are only time. That's your reality. You're made up of time. When a day goes by, part of you has gone by also. Part of you has left. So the day that just went by, that we wasted that time, we will never get that opportunity again. So that's one importance of time that Allah is trying to tell us, that time is crucial. Time is crucial, that you are made up of time. When a day goes by, a year goes by, you will never get that time back again. Time, we learn a lot of things with the passing of time, right? Let's talk about time as like history. What do we learn from the passing of time? We learn a lot of lessons, I think.
We read an awful lot of lessons that everything has a time limit.
Very
Time
good.
is limited. Our lives are limited. Societies are limited. Organizations are limited. Religions are limited. Everything is
Very good. Yes.
set times.
Yes. So with time, when we look at time as a whole, as like history, we learn something. Like you said, that everything is limited, or maybe everything rises and falls, right? Everything rises and falls. So we see empires very, very strong. Eventually, they all decline. No empire has ever lasted, for example, for forever. Every empire, we know that it rose and then it fell. Every country that became, it rose and then it fell at some point. Never become too arrogant that your country or the place you're living or this superpowers on earth, they're always going to be like that. No, they might be like that for decades or hundreds of years even, but in the end, everything declines. Has any person ever lived forever? No. Every person will eventually die. So we see that people live and die. So we see many amazing things when we think about history. We think about time as a whole, that everything has an appointed time. Everything rises and falls. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it where everything which goes up has to come down. The Prophet ﷺ, he said those words that, he said, حَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَنْ لَا يَرْفَعَ شَيْئًا إِلَّا وَضَعَهُ أو كما قال. The Prophet ﷺ said that it's the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or Allah made it, that nothing rises except that it will fall also. Nothing rises except that it will fall. So these are part of the lessons of time. We could also look at, for example, the day and the night and the seasons, and all of these are signs of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, if we just had daytime all the time, if we had the sun 24/7 and that's all we knew in this life, that's just how Allah created the earth. Imagine how amazing it would be if that light went out all of a sudden. That sun, the light went out all of a sudden and then we couldn't see. It was darkness and we weren't used to it. It would be amazing because it would be the first time we see it. But for us, we see it every day. We see every day, we see a daytime, then we see a nighttime. The earth revolves, it goes into orbit. Yes, there's the moon and the sun, and we don't really think too much about it. It's not really something too amazing because it's something that we see constantly. But in reality, it is something amazing if we think about it. Day and night. The whole world becomes dark. The whole world is filled with light again. That's something, subhanAllah, very amazing. The seasons, if again we become used to it. But it's amazing that the place you're living in could be very, very hot, becomes very, very cold. It could be everything in the middle. All of these things, we become used to it and we just see it and we don't think of it as a big deal. But in reality, it is, subhanAllah, something amazing. So these are all important things to think about when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by time. We will continue after the adhan, inshallah. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So inshallah we'll finish, summarize things, so keep it short. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by time. What is the answer, or what is the reason for that swear? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that verily man is what? In loss. In loss. So that means that every human being is a loser. That's what it's saying. Every human being is a loser. You're losing out. Every human being is losing out. Illa. And then we see that except. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes an exception for a certain kind of person. Otherwise, every single human being is losing out. You know? And we might say, what are we losing out? You know, it's just, you know, it's something like not tangible to say, like reward from Allah or something like that. But we are losing. You know, if we aren't good Muslims in this life, and then we lose out on the next life, no matter how much money we have in this life or how many material things we have, we are losers in the end. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says every human being is in loss. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says every human being is in loss, لَفِي خُسْر, the scholars of tafsir, they said that it would have been possible, or a person could say that every human being is khasir, meaning a loser. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He could have said every human being is a loser. But He phrased it in a way that says every human being is in loss. We don't normally talk like that. We don't normally say somebody is in loss. We say somebody's losing, for example. We say somebody is a loser. But what does it mean that they're in loss? Like you're actually in it. You are actually in it. They said that's a way of exaggerating or showing to the extent of how much they are in losing out. That they're actually like swimming in khusr. They're swimming in loss. They're sunk into it. It's like loss is a thing, a physical thing, and they've fallen into it. That's to show how much people are losing. How much people are losing out if they don't do these 4 characteristics that we are going to see next. So if we don't do them, we're all going to be losers. What are these 4 exceptions to that? That if we follow these 4 things and we have those 4 attributes, we would not be considered as losers. Actually, we're winners. Actually, we're gaining. We are profitable. Nobody wants to be a loser, right? No, everybody wants to make money. Nobody wants to lose money. Everybody wants a family. Nobody wants to lose their family. Everybody wants something, power, position, whatever. Nobody wants to lose that thing. Nobody wants to lose it. So we want to not be losers. We want to be winners. We want to gain something. So all of that is we have to pay attention to these 4 exceptions that come next. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. They are, the first one, except for those who believe. They believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in everything that relates to believing in Allah. So you can't be a Muslim and just say, I believe in Allah, and don't believe in this or that, or you just pick and choose what you believe in. No. There are some things that come along with believing in Allah because Allah informed us of those things. So you believe in Allah, you believe in the angels also, you believe in the books that were sent down to the previous prophets, you believe in all of the prophets, and you believe in the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as the final messenger. You believe in the Day of Judgment. You believe in Qadar, or the predestination or the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these things that they follow the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't believe in one and reject the other. They all come as a package. So you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also includes learning about Allah. You can't really believe in Allah without knowing who He is. You can't really believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowing who He is. You have to learn some basics about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't mean you have to be a scholar or anything, but you have to know some basics about who you're worshipping so that you can really say you're worshipping Allah. So that's the first one. If we don't believe, we're in a state of loss. That's the first and foremost thing. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. What does that mean? وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. The next part of the ayah. So the belief in Allah and then
enjoy true faith.
No, that's the third one, or that's the
Deeds, righteous deeds.
Do righteous deeds, right? We do righteous deeds.
Do good.
So to believe in Allah and to do righteous deeds. So right away here we see something. Is Islam just a religion you believe in your heart and you don't do anything after that? Is Islam a religion like that? No. It's not a religion that, it's not just a mere belief like an ideology, something you believe in, but you don't show at all with your actions or your limbs. No. It's something you believe and then it has to show. And if somebody says, I'm a Muslim, or they believe in Allah, and they don't do any deeds from the deeds of Islam, no prayer, no fasting, no hajj, none of the good manners that Islam calls for. If a person says that they're a Muslim, but they don't do anything, then there's something very questionable here. Because Islam, again, is not just a mere belief. It's not something you say with your tongue one time, you say that you're a Muslim and then that's it. No, Islam requires good deeds. Islam requires good deeds. Of course, you're not going to be perfect, and it's not expected of us to be perfect. A person might miss out on some good deeds sometimes. A person might commit sins sometimes. That's natural, and now we're actually going to see that in the next two characteristics. But it's expected that if you are a Muslim, that belief will push you to doing some good deeds at the very least. And then the shortcoming, you hope that Allah would forgive it. You know? But Islam requires action. Belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires action. And that's something which is every Muslim should realize. You know, there's not really like a lot of people times you hear the phrase like not practicing Muslim. So a Muslim, they don't practice at all, meaning like nothing. So again, like we said, that's very questionable. If you believed in Islam, you would do something, at the very least, even every once in a while. You might do a lot of sins, but at the very least, that belief in Islam would push you a little bit to do some good deeds. So that's what it means to believe and to do good deeds. And these two are always mentioned together in the Quran. They're always mentioned together in the Quran. If you ever read in the Quran, believe in Allah, you always find with it, believe and to do good deeds. You always find that together. Because again, like we said, that these two come together. And that, that answers a common question. People always say, what if I'm just a good person in life? What if, religion doesn't matter much, what you believe doesn't matter much. What's really important is that you're a good person. A lot of people say that and they believe that nowadays. And we say as Muslims, you got half of the equation basically. Yes, you have to be a good person. Yes, that's called for and we want you to be a good person. But no, we disagree with the fact that it doesn't matter what you believe. Or as long as you're a good person, what's between you and God is that's personal. No, if you really want to be saved, then the two are very crucial and they have to come together. Belief and doing good deeds. So one without the other is missing something which is very crucial. The third one, what's the third one? Believe and do good deeds and وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, meaning? Join together in what was that translation?
The mutual teaching of truth.
Okay, the mutual teaching of truth. Good. So they translate it here as join together. So order, sometimes you see it translated as order, like order with good or order with truth. So tawasaw in the Arabic language is like a verb form which means that it's between a number of people or between two people at least. It's between a group. Tawasaw. Meaning that people are ordering one another with truth, meaning with goodness. People are ordering one another. Meaning that Muslim society requires that Muslims order one another, meaning advise one another, or join together in telling one another about the truth, meaning about good deeds and about goodness and anything that falls in line with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So, it's a group thing. It's a community thing. That everybody's working together to call one another to truth and to goodness. That falls into what we said earlier, that Allah doesn't expect us to be perfect. We're not expected to be perfect, free of sin 100%, and to do everything 100%. Rather, Allah knows that we're weak and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to get lazy and we're going to have shortcomings. That's why the third one is there. That's why the third attribute is there, is that we call one another and advise one another to do good and to remind one another of goodness. So Islam is a religion where people order and remind and advise one another. It's not a religion where you just say everybody can do whatever they want. It's not up to me. It's not my concern. No. In Islam, we are concerned with other people. Of course, you do it in a nice way. We have so many complaints. I'm sure every single one of us has stories of people thinking that they're advising you. In reality, they're just driving you away because they did it in a bad way. They thought they're advising you with goodness, but their technique was really bad. So every one of us knows that, and we've seen that. So it doesn't mean you have to be rude, but it means that we as Muslims, we care about one another and we advise one another with goodness. We advise one another with anything that is part of the religion of Islam, is part of that meaning of truth or haqq. So we remind one another. So Islam is a religion that calls us to be concerned about other people, to be worried about them, to try to advise them. If you see somebody falling short in a good deed, remind them. If you see somebody doing a sin, again, try to tell them, that this is going to be harmful for you. In a nice way, in a very kind way, in the best way that you can. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be you. For example, somebody might not listen to you. Go to his friend, for example, and tell him, why don't you advise him about this or that. Go to one of their family members, for example, that might be able to help them and speak to them like as somebody really close to them. So your main concern is that the message is accepted by that person, or you try at least to deliver that message. So that's the religion of Islam. So Islam is a religion that calls us to be concerned for other people, to be concerned for our fellow Muslims in these matters, and to be concerned for non-Muslims by calling them to Islam, by calling them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes?
If somebody has a issue reminding, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
go to somebody else to tell them to remind, would it be a form of backbiting?
There's actually, they say 6 exceptions to backbiting, meaning that they would be permissible. And one of those exceptions is you're trying to stop somebody from a sin. So if, for example, somebody's doing a sin and it's harming them, if you go to a person that can help that person, if you go to like a family member or a friend or something like that can sit down with that person and his word would be accepted by him, or at least his advice might be heard by him more, then that's not backbiting, or you could say it is a backbiting, but it's an exception to the rule of the prohibited kind of backbiting. So they mention 6 kinds of things which are exceptions from backbiting. One of them, for example, is if somebody comes to you with seeking advice about a person. Like let's say a woman or a man, they want to get married, so they say, what do you think about so-and-so, the person I'm interested in marriage for? You have to speak the truth about that person, even if it is something bad. You have to say, well, I know something bad about him or her. That's not backbiting at that point. Same thing with if you want to do business, and somebody says, I might get into a business with so-and-so. What do you know about him? So you say, well, I heard he's not that trustworthy. He took somebody's money and then he never paid it back, for example. So yes, it's backbiting in the sense that you're talking bad about a person, but it's a necessity in this case because you're warning your Muslim brother, you're keeping them away from something which is harmful. So that's a good question, yeah, but it would be a permissible kind of like backbiting, or an exception to the rule, if necessary. If necessary that you have to use another person, and it's not going to make the issue spread more than necessary, then that would be permissible in that case. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. And also they order and remind one another. So again, it's as a group and a community. They remind one another with patience. They remind one another with patience. Logically speaking, what's going to happen when people start advising one another? When people start telling one another what they should or shouldn't be doing in Islam? What's going to happen after that? Somebody's going to get upset, right? Somebody's not going to like it. Even if you're telling the truth. Even if it's the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and he has the best manners and the best characters, but still people got angry with his message, right? So if you ever tell people, advise them, then some people are going to get upset. Some people are not going to like that you are getting in there what they think is their personal matters, So at this point, some people will get upset. As long as we did what we were supposed to, we advised in the correct manner, and we didn't expose that person in public, for example. We didn't tell him in front of a crowd of people, but you took him to the side and told him personally, as long as you did everything right, then you have no reason to worry. Rather, what you just have to do is have patience at that point. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, advise each other with patience also. Remind each other with patience. Luqman al-Hakim, in the Quran, he's mentioned as the very wise man, and he's advising his son. One of the advices that Luqman gives to his son is, he says to him, Ya bunayya, aqim as-salah, wa'mur bil-ma'ruf, wanha 'anil munkar, wasbir 'ala ma asabak. He says, O my son, establish the prayer, perform the prayer, order good, meaning order people with goodness, tell people to stay away from evil, and have patience with the harm that will afflict you after that. Have patience with the harm that will afflict you. Because anybody who does that, whether a prophet or anyone after the prophets, somebody's going to get mad and they're going to try to harm you after that. They're going to say, who does this person think he is? She thinks she's so religious. They think they're the haram police or whatever. People have all kinds of terms. So anytime you try to order people with good, even in the best way, somebody's not going to like it. So have patience at this point. Have patience with that harm that they're going to try to afflict you with. They're going to try to talk bad about you. They're going to do this or that. You just got to have patience and remind other people with patience too. Remind other people with patience too. There's a number of kinds of patience. So just as a benefit, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to order each other with sabr. What are the different kinds of sabr? What are the different kinds of sabr or patience? One kind of patience is patience upon doing good deeds. Patience in staying firm upon doing good deeds. Right? What's a good deed that requires patience? It's a lot of them. Most good deeds. Prayer, right? Prayer requires that you take time out of your busy day to go and pray. If you are working or at school, it might require praying in front of other people and praying in front of non-Muslims. It might require asking, for accommodation, which sometimes people are too embarrassed to do. It might require somebody making a comment about you or making fun of you because of your prayer. Prayer itself, you have to have patience in focusing on your prayer. So many people pray, but they're just thinking about what they want to eat afterwards, what they want to grab for lunch, what they're going to say to their friend when they see them after the prayer, what they're going to do, later on in the day. They're thinking about work, they're thinking about everything but the prayer itself. So, focusing on the prayer or having khushu' in the prayer, that requires patience. So likewise with every good deed. Any good deed, you have to have patience in doing it. Because there's some difficulty associated with it, so you have to have patience in doing it. Patience in staying firm upon it. What do you think would be the next kind of patience? If one is patience in doing a good deed, what's the other one? The opposite. Staying away from bad deeds requires patience, right? It requires patience. We all have bad deeds that we're tempted to do, right? Every single day. There's some bad deeds that we would do, or we are tempted to do, or it's like our soul is calling us to do it. So you're having patience by holding yourself back. That's a form of patience. So it's like you're living your whole life patient. You're living your whole life in sabr. You're holding yourself back from disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the one kind of patience, or the first kind of patience, is patience in doing a good deed, staying firm upon that good deed. The second kind is patience in staying away from sinning, from disobeying Allah. And a third kind of patience is patience with any harm or calamity that afflicts you in this life. Like we said, the example that, people talk bad about you because you're ordering good or forbidding evil, so people talk bad about you. For example, like natural calamities that happen, whether a sickness, a death, some family problems, anything that we go through, all of that is patience that we just have to have patience with it. Or all of those are situations that we just have to have patience with it. We have to realize it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we move on from there. We try to have patience and see what we can do also to fix that situation. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Somebody died, there's nothing you can do to fix the situation. Sometimes you can, kind of fix the situation or improve it. But in any case, you have patience. You have patience with that difficulty, knowing that it came from Allah.
our translation, this translation also uses the term perseverance, patience and perseverance.
Patience and perseverance.
And I see the two working together, but very different.
Perseverance. Yeah, so sabr could also have that meaning. Like we said that it means to stay firm upon doing a good deed. So maybe that's part of the meaning they took into consideration when they added the word perseverance. So usually they translate sabr as patience. But yeah, like we said, it also has that meaning of staying firm upon something. So therefore you could kind of see the meaning of perseverance too. So that's the third one. By the way, patience with a calamity, it has to be right away when the calamity happens. The Prophet ﷺ, he came to a woman, he passed by a woman that was at a grave and she was crying loudly. She was like wailing. So the Prophet ﷺ told her, have taqwa of Allah and have patience. So she said to the Prophet, and she had her back to him, she didn't realize who he was. She said, get away from me because you don't know what I've gone through. You don't know my calamity. You don't know my difficulty. Somebody, her son died or something. So she was crying very loudly at the grave. The Prophet ﷺ told her, have patience. So she said these words to him, get away from me. You don't know my difficulty or my calamity. The Prophet ﷺ just kept walking. He just went home. The woman, the people around her, they told her, do you know who you just said those rude words to? That was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So she went to the Prophet ﷺ to his house and she knocked on the door and he opened the door and she said, Ya Rasulullah, I didn't realize that was you. So she went to apologize that she said, get away from me. She said, I didn't realize that was you. So the Prophet ﷺ told her a very important lesson. He said that patience is at the first stroke or news of difficulty. Patience is at the first stroke or the news of difficulty. Meaning when you receive the news of difficulty, that's when you hold yourself back and you just say, for example, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, we all belong to Allah and we all will return to Allah. And you calm yourself down. Sure, you might cry, for example, if it's something very difficult, but you don't yell and scream and tear your clothes and stuff like that. Rather, you just realize that this is from Allah. No matter how difficult it seems, it's from Allah. So that's true patience, is when you first receive the news. Some people, they receive bad news or something bad happens and they start yelling and kicking and screaming and everything you can imagine. Then after a week you see them and they're like, Alhamdulillah, I have patience. I'm just patient with what Allah tested me with. In reality, they didn't. It took them a while before they finally submitted to the fact that there's nothing they can do. That's not true patience. True patience is when you first receive the news, that you calm yourself down and you realize that this is from Allah. There's nothing you can do to change what has happened in the past. So this is basically the end of the surah, that we advise ourselves with those things. Or we believe in Allah, we do good deeds, we advise one another with goodness or truth, and we advise one another with patience. A couple things, and we'll end inshallah. First of all, we see that the first two, they're relating to our own selves. Believe in Allah and do good deeds. So that's relating to fixing ourselves first. We have to fix ourselves first. Then the other two characteristics, they're relating to advising other people now. So once you've kind of worked on yourself a little bit by believing and doing good deeds, then you work on others and society by calling others to good and by calling others to patience. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect, and that's often misunderstood. Some people think you have to be a perfect Muslim before you can advise anybody. That's not the case. And actually, even you could be doing a sin and you tell somebody not to do that sin. And that's not necessarily being a hypocrite. Rather, you're just telling somebody, don't do the same mistake I did. If a father smokes, doesn't he tell his son, don't smoke? Doesn't the father tell his kids, don't smoke? He does, right? Is he a hypocrite by doing so? Not necessarily. Yes, he's being a bad example, of course, by doing it. But he's not necessarily a hypocrite. He knows maybe it's bad, but he just wants to tell his kids, don't do it, don't fall into the same mistake I made. So we as Muslims, we have to realize that. We don't have to be perfect people to advise other people. If we're doing a sin and we see our Muslim brother or sister falling into that sin, advise them because you don't want them to make the same mistake you're making. It's not necessarily hypocrisy. Of course, you want to fear for hypocrisy by doing a sin and then telling other people not to do it. So you don't want to continue that situation. But if you do so, you're not necessarily like being hypocritical. Rather, you're just trying to warn people away from something that you know is bad and it's harmful. And finally, it was narrated in a hadith that it's authentic hadith or a sound hadith that one of the companions, he said that when two companions from the companions of Rasulullah would end a gathering, whenever they would meet together, and then one of them would leave, they would recite this surah. They would recite this surah, Wal Asr, before leaving one another, and then they would say Salamu Alaikum. They would say Salamu Alaikum to one another. So this hadith, we benefited from it. You sometimes hear like a speaker or something like that before the end of a speech. He will say Wal Asr, Inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Because of this, because the Sahaba, it was narrated that sometimes they would, when they would separate from one another or like leave a gathering, they would remind each other with this surah. Again, because it's a very short surah, but it contains a lot of very deep meanings, and it contains the meaning of pretty much everything that we need in Islam to be good people and to do righteous deeds, and then to remind one another after that. So inshallah we'll end here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.